before we get started here, check. So, I really, I really want to emphasize how I came to this list. So, browsing around the internets, I always liked and gravitate. Well, um, at in some headspace, I was gravitating toward these, and I would always come across these like um, best of or best of all this, best of all faces in the industry, and we'll talk about the breasts and the butts, or whether we're talking about ethnicities. I mean, and it's always like whatever happens to be the most popular at the moment, and obviously just out of happenstance of the people who are making these videos, that just happens to be the people that are their favorites. Um, and I think in the back of my mind, I sort of subconsciously was concocting anyway. I was sort of it sort of culminated to these names. Each one of these figures, I think, define the popularities of ample posteriors in the industry. Each one of them, I think, come in their own unique way. They're all icons, and they all represent a piece of it. Now, I really want to emphasize that it's not so much about them having uh, a big butt. I mean, quite frankly, that's especially at this point, it's very commonplace. But rather, it is their impact in that since we're talking about aspects of them as far as their physical appearance, since we are talking about pornography, so thus their physical appearance, that their buttocks happens to also be a kind of I guess a giant figure. Um, no, well, I guess intended um, in relations to their career, and I wanted to really, we can go about this in a canonical sense. I think that's a great place to start. All I'm trying to say is that, what am I trying to say? I'm saying that when it comes to especially the buttocks, that is a chain along or connected to this, I guess, historical kind of cycle when it comes to the buttocks. Because the buttocks, in it being large, there was always some kind of um, emphasis on the buttocks, but I guess it entirely depends on in what way. So let's go to a template where the buttocks wasn't that much of a thing. That much of a thing. So in the adult industry, especially, the buttocks um, wasn't exactly in. As you would probably um, extrapolate, the sex industry is just kind of a reflection of what's going on in society. So you had a lot of a lot of emphasis on physical fitness, um, keeping a very kind of tight body. Um, this isn't a template where it wasn't heavily emphasized, at least within mainstream. In fact, it's heavily supported by. Have you ever heard of a filmmaker called like Russ Myers and a lot of films around sexploitation? You got a lot of emphasis, and especially um, which I think it still kind of carries on within Asian culture, at least in terms of their sexual depiction, where big bust is sort of in. Which is interesting when you consider that, according to some psychologists, specifically one, um, maybe was it more? Anyway, it was that, especially when it comes to big busts, and really especially with Russ Myers, it's not so much that having big breasts in itself. I mean, there's plenty of um, figures I can probably bring up that are, especially within the adult industry, that were very famous for having the big bust because that was sort of in. Candy Samples, for example. Candy Samples, for example, was a huge figure in that, so to speak. Um, and you had a lot of figures within Russ Meyer's pictures that were famous for having the big bust. Now, the emphasis wasn't so much that they had the big bust. Something that is probably reflected in some of the theories within psychology, let me emphasize it here, that the thing about the big bust, the reason why, or in theory, why having large breasts in some presentation, because presentation is a huge thing, that a lot of the emphasis on big busts, especially in the films, sexploitations and in pornography, big busts was, I think, largely the popularity of it was largely due to the emphasis on its presentation. So, if we're talking about, let's take cleavage. Cleavage is like probably, I'm gonna guess, a pretty significant reason for why it was ever popular to that extent. Of course, this is also supported by the fact that in other countries within continents, that it's not that big busts or breasts in general aren't sexualized, but probably not as much as it is in other places. And a lot of this has to do with the emphasis on, oh shit, I'm gonna fuck this up. But shit. The wait, shit. Hold on. I didn't. Hold on. Oh, wait. So all I'm saying when it comes to the erogenous, the erogenous, the erogenous zones, Jesus. Um, have you ever noticed that, like, when it comes to highlighting aspects of secondary characteristics, specifically ones that are emphasized when it comes to sex, like breasts, like the bucks, like hips, thighs, um, very sensitive areas for the most part. And especially when it comes to, like let's talk about the breast, for example. So we don't necessarily cover portions of the breast, but we do cover the nipples. You see this in a lot of advertisement, a lot of media. You'll notice this, but you also notice this well in the way. Oh my God! Just generally how we dress, specifically when it comes to females. Um, Presentation and almost like a kind of like a soft reveal of those those erogenous zones, and so we'll kind of tease certain portions of it, like the cleavage or the side boob thing, or portions of the thigh, or we'll probably reveal the thigh, but just when it comes to the zones, when it comes to, that's like a thing. I just always say when it comes to things, when it comes to things, I guess it's just one of those kind of things you depend on, in order to string things together. But anyway, yeah, when it comes to, you see, the zones. When we're in the zone, when we're talking about the zones, man, we are highlighting those portions uh, as a almost, I guess, invitation of those most prominent aspects. So, like, with the breasts, we're really just covering the nipples or the areola. Jesus, son of a bitch. Anyway, you see what I'm saying. And I think just matter of fact, just keep that in mind as you're going along. All right, so like when it comes to the butt, yeah. So the is not necessarily considered a zone, but I don't think it's a coincidence that the anus is in that area. Thus, we are once again giving somewhat of a. And again, we can go back to Alfred Kinsley and his. Um, like it all comes together. It's all connected. Like whether we're talking about those zones or we're talking about. It's like they topple each other. There's a through line with it. So it makes it even more important, right? So if we're saying that the buttocks is a primary kind of zone for the primates, according to certain behavioral psychologists, certain scientists, and then you also have to take into fact of the erogenous zones, then very much the buttocks, the breasts would be a huge thing, especially with the buttocks, and then the emphasis on certain aspects of the breasts. So it all kind of comes together. That's all I really want to emphasize. Anyway, let's do this. Yes. Anyway, let's go ahead and let's go with kind of in a space where that's not really that much of a thing. We're still kind of in the big bus, and even though that's still popular, continues to be, and that's pretty much kind of a stable of the industry, because it's kind of a stable in terms of the fetishization of people when it comes to sexuality among all genders, it seems. So let's go ahead and go with where we climb. So where do we go? Where do we even start here? I think people kind of know or can kind of get where I'm going at. That as far as the most known, most prominent in the industry, as far as their posterior, we have to go with the one that's considered the best ass in the industry. That one. Nina Hartley is the epitome of sexual liberation. Liberation in general. Um, Not only her as a person, but just like when you look at her background with her parents, being a part of the Communist Party, her being a very, I suppose, very vocal figure in the industry. If there was anyone in the industry that's kind of an icon as far as a spokesperson, as far as yeah, a spokesperson, but like a large voice in the um, I guess the sex positive part of the industry, as far as especially when we're moving through culturally and trying to hit to a place where we can truly be liberated. Um, I think she's a great figure to look toward, especially when it comes to information. I mean, she is not only a liberator, but just like I think a general educator when it comes to the adult industry. Um, I'm sitting here talking. I'm trying to like rearrange my language anyway. Um, but like her background, and also she's probably incidentally the person I probably know more about just from there. She's been in a handful of interviews. Um, those who remember Phil Donahue, um, that's a name that I literally just popped in my head. But yeah, probably one of the first interviews I've seen her in was in the Phil Donahue interview. She was there with a few other porn stars, but she was always kind of in the forefront when it comes to liberation. And I'm sure she gets this from her parents. I know her parents, again, the Party, emphasis on her dad, I think I think the term is blacklisted. This is kind of around um, the big red state scare, well, with Russia and everything. Um, well, with the Soviet Union specifically. So you had that going on, and so like her whole thing is just with her background with her parents, and she's educated herself and knows that she was a registered nurse. She saw a movie, and like I'm just kind of going through, but like she she had this background with her parents. Um, and she was always like very super curious about her body and others. She knew that she was um, uh, I was gonna say bisexual. I will say sexually curious. I think I'm not entirely sure if she considers herself. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, here's the thing. Like I've seen so many things of her that I'm able to talk about it, but I also know that. Don't worry, I'm gonna make sure that I'll get like real specific because I feel like I can kind of just talk about her. Because that's not really because we're gonna get to her bottom, but I really want to emphasize her place in the industry because that alone, like when I'm talking about the best posteriors in adult history in the adult industry, I mean it. I mean these people, these individuals are true individuals in the industry, and she's such a large spokesperson for the industry itself. Um, Such a large, definitely a person I would highlight as an educator of the adult industry. There are a few others, but she definitely is in there as far as an educator, as far as someone who kind of stands up for sexual liberation and free speech. Um, who is willing to look at? And it's funny, especially with her background, her being a socialist. Um, is quite interesting. I don't even. I feel like I almost feel like the sex industry um, and her place in it is almost incidental. I think she was always going to go this way, whether it's going to be the adult industry or some other thing. I think it's just an emphasis on her care when it comes to liberation in the general sense for the populace as a whole. And she kind of has her finger in a lot, well, so to speak. Uh, I definitely did not. Well, her finger on the pulse of Jesus Christ, of when it comes to sexual, no, really when it comes to the industry as it is, as you see it. Um, I'm she's kind of I feel like she's still active in so many other ways. Because she's done so many things in the industry. I think her as a performer, it's just really just one kind of small portion. She's kind of an adventurer, kind of a true rebel, the true rebel when it comes in general. I think she's just a rebel in general, and I think just her slot in the industry as an important figure is just one of many things. So there's that. Then when it comes to her butt, I'm gonna be honest. Like in some ways, I I don't know. It's not that there wasn't like people who didn't have large and it wasn't even so much it was large. So here's the thing about, and I'll kind of go into this when it comes to I'm gonna keep saying I'm sorry that's just one of those things I string along that's just a thing now. Um, but when it comes to her buttocks specifically, um, I always thought because it's a very muscular butt. It's not so much that it's just as large. I think I'm gonna have this theory. I think it just looks really it looks great. I don't even think it's so much that it's big. She has this very she was always very toned. She always kept her body very tight, very toned. Um, Highlights of she's also one of those. Well, this is kind of a thing too. So there in I don't know if it's I don't think is that much of a thing at this point, but there was a large emphasis on tan lines, and she would have these tan lines like a lot of people, but her butt specifically was very just it was just well toned. She always kept a very healthy body, and so her butt being big but also very toned. So I think somehow in the Matrix, I think it was like she was able to get through. Remember, we're still in the big bus, so there really wasn't too many emphasis on butts. Even and again, there were people who are known for having big, who are known for having ample posteriors. Um, I can think of figures, not even necessarily in pornography. You think like Betty Page. Betty Page was known for having a big butt, for having a nice, large butt. But you had Nina Hartley, who had come in, and again, it's not so much that she had nice. She's one of the few who's actually like given the title of having the best asses in the industry. In fact, I think officially she's kind of the one who has it. I know there's figures we're going to bring up, but I think she kind of incidentally evolution like this is what I mean. I feel like a lot of this is incidental with her because again, she had this very very athletic toned figure. Her butt was large, um, but what really stood out is the way that it was presented. Again, she had the tan line thing going on. She was she really there was a lot of emphasis on in the way that she kind of presented herself, and I think that's largely due with because it just it's considering we're in the large bust arena. It's curious that she kind of came through as the only one. I don't think I mean, there really wasn't. There was a few, um, but she was the one that really kind of stood out as far as mainstream. Because again, it's not like Big Bus isn't a thing. It's just that not so much in the mainstream, at least as far. I mean, we were always going in circles and shit, but I just mean in this particular portion in history, American history specifically. Um, it's kind of interesting that she would come through as the one who's known for having the big butt. Although I think it's become more acknowledged of her big butt, but I think it was big but it was toned. It was hard not to notice. That's the thing. It was like yeah, there were nice butts, but she was the one that just was the most noticeable, right? Because it was large, but it was well toned. Um, and maybe in other places it would have been considered tacky or something. I don't know. But in the industry, um, it was well portioned. Um, and so like you take this huge icon who's already great on her own right, mixed with the fact that she had this butt, and then incidentally kind of, I'm not going to say push the pop. She did. I don't think that's the thing. I don't think as far as that Mount at Rushmore, you have to consider the fact that some of these people are going to be independent. They're in their own little zone. I think she somehow was able to carve her own little zone, and thus she gets this, I guess, little, I guess, statue on the Mount. She gets kind of the first one, um, because her bottom continues to get celebrated. But it was like she was in her own little bubble, and then as we got more, as the bottom got more popular, she just stayed in it. Not, she was never not famous for having a big butt. You know what I mean? Like she was just in a class on her own, and then she was just along for the ride in a lot of ways. It's quite amazing actually. It's unbelievable. Good job. Um, but if there was ever a figure in terms of sexual education, especially, I know like it's like Nina Hartley or maybe like Anna Sprinkles. Also pretty huge in terms of big bust. She was kind of a big figure there too. But Anna Sprinkles, Nina Hartley. Um, I can go through names, but maybe I'll list them or something. Anyway, you see my point. So she was kind of in a class on her own, um, and she continues to get that recognition in that way. So Nina Hartley,